My girlfriend ran away with someone 16 years ago. Before she left, she sent me a text message. How can a lowly police constable like you provide for me? But 16 years later, I received a call from her, seemingly from 2008. That's when I realized she hadn't just left. She had died. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. My name is Zion Wilson. I'm 43 years old, and I'm the head of the police criminal investigation department in this city. I'm not at work today because I'm on sick leave. An old injury from a case 16 years ago acts up terribly on rainy days. Just like Imogen's departure, it seems like ancient history, but the pain still ambushes this old soldier at certain moments. Like the old wound, Imogen also left me 16 years ago. She was my first love and my only girlfriend all these years. 16 years ago, she succumbed to vanity and had an affair with the editor-in-chief of the magazine where she worked. They both moved to France and settled there, never to be heard from again. I still remember her cold text message. You're just a small-time cop. You'll never amount to anything. My life has many possibilities, and the best ones don't include you. That was the last thing she ever said to me. Times have changed now. That magazine went bust long ago. I wonder how she's doing in France. Probably a middle-aged woman now, busy teaching her kids to say, oui, oui. But yesterday, something happened related to their old magazine office. During renovations at the former site of the magazine where Imogen used to work, they suddenly pulled out a nameless corpse from the wall. Nothing left but bones. The department wants us to investigate this case now, but with my old injury flaring up, I had to hand the work over to my subordinates. At the same time, I'm thinking that sooner or later, I'll have to transfer to a desk job. I can't stay on the front lines forever. Perhaps it was this corpse from the magazine office that made me think of that woman again. Today, taking advantage of my day off, I went up to the attic to sort through some old things. Those old things are all remnants from when Imogen and I were together. I've been afraid to look back at them all these years. Although when investigating cases, I'm always the first to charge ahead, not afraid of any hardened criminals. But faced with Imogen, that love criminal, I always run away, run away, run away. After she left, I often had dreams. Sometimes I dreamed of watching a Hugh Grant film with her at the cinema. Sometimes I dreamed of her calling me Old Wilson in my ear. I really disliked her calling me that back then. It made me feel old. She joked that when I turned 40, everyone would have to call me Old Wilson, so she was claiming priority. Actually, she was wrong. Now no one calls me Old Wilson. They all call me Wilson Sr. Even older than Old Wilson, because by the time I was about 35, my hair was almost completely white, and being serious and taciturn at work, everyone keeps their distance and calls me Wilson Sr., fully expressing their respect and unfamiliarity. Even the director jokes and calls me that sometimes. But yesterday, something my apprentice Braden Mitchell said struck me. He said, "Master, you can't keep looking back. You've got to move forward. You demand progress in investigations, but in life, you can't keep dwelling on the past." Although I scolded him at the time, I thought he had a point. So today I started sorting through those old things, throwing away what needed to be thrown away. During the cleanup, I found an old Vodafone phone I used to use. Amazingly, after fiddling with it a bit, it actually turned on. This phone must be from when I was dating Imogen, and later I just put it directly in the junk box, because it contained too many text messages with Imogen, including that most hurtful one. Opening it now, my mindset seems to have changed, and I'm not as resentful as before. In the past, I always thought I hoped Imogen was having a terrible time in France. The worse off she was, the more vindicated I felt. Now thinking about it, I'd actually feel better if she was doing well. It would prove that my sacrifice was worth something. But just as it turned on, suddenly, I received a call. It was a landline number. I hadn't used this number for over a decade. How could someone be calling? Curious, I pressed answer and said, "Hello." The voice on the other end said, "Wilson, why did it take you so long to answer the phone?" I was stunned. It was Imogen's voice. Seeing that I wasn't responding, the voice on the other end continued, "My mobile's dead. So I'm calling you from the office landline. You finally picked up. Have you blocked my number or something? I was bewildered. My first thought was that someone was playing a prank on me, or it was some sort of phone scam, because it couldn't be such a coincidence that Imogen would call me right after I'd turned on my old phone, after 16 years of no contact. So, my professional instincts kicked in, and my voice turned stern. Is this a phone scam from abroad? Listen, I'm a detective. You've just tried to scam a police officer. I'll be tracing this call to pinpoint your exact location. To my surprise, the caller didn't panic. Instead, they became even more agitated. Zion, have you lost your mind? What foreign scam? Do they even have electricity there? Tracing the call to pinpoint my location? You've been watching too many American crime dramas. If you can't tell a joke, don't try. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing. It had been years since I'd heard that word. It felt like a blast from the past. Suddenly, I had a strange feeling this could actually be Imogen, but Imogen from the past. Having investigated cases for years, I'd studied voice changes in people. No scammer could maintain such emotional consistency in their voice while lying, and the linguistic details were too authentic to fake. But to be cautious, I decided to test her. Oh, Imogen, I'm sorry. I overslept. Can I ask what date it is? The station wants us to draft a security plan for the Olympics, and I've lost track of time while working on it. The UK has only hosted the Olympics once in recent years, so if this really was Imogen from the past, regardless of which time she was in, she would give an immediate and genuine response to this news. To my surprise, Imogen said, "You're not Zion. You're an imposter. The Olympics finished 2 months ago. What kind of planning is your station asking for now?" Hearing this, I burst into tears, because I was certain now. It was Imogen, and it was Imogen from October 2008. The same Imogen who, in a month's time, would leave me for South Korea, never to return. Hearing my sobs, Imogen became anxious. "Zion, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" All right. I believe you've been working too hard on that mother and child murder case. You must be under a lot of stress. I'll come to the station later and bring you something nice to eat. Okay? At this point, I struggled to control my emotions and said, "You're right. I'm not the Zion from 2008. I'm Zion from 2024. Do you believe me?" Imogen was silent for half a minute, then said, "I'd be an idiot to believe that." I wasn't surprised by this reaction. Anyone would respond the same way if they suddenly heard such a claim. Do you think I'm the type to joke around? This question seemed to stump Imogen, because I had always been a rather quiet person. She used to often tease me for being a blockhead who only knew how to solve cases. Imogen said from the other end of the line, "But what you're saying is too far-fetched. You'd laugh at me if I believed you. How would you like me to prove it then?" Imogen thought for a moment. "Well, tell me, does Ed Sheeran still release new songs in 2024? This was a reasonable request, as Imogen was a big Ed Sheeran fan. When we were together, she played his songs every day. He just released one recently, but it's not getting great reviews. However, he put out an album last year that sold really well. I think it was #1 worldwide. Although it didn't sound very convincing, the latter part of my statement clearly pleased Imogen as a fan. Whether it was true or not, she decided to continue our bizarre conversation. "So, is he still with Cherry Seaborn?" "Yes, they're still together." "Who's Cherry Seaborn?" "Never heard of her." "Well, she'd only be about 17 now, so of course you wouldn't know who she is." This comment annoyed Imogen again, and she said, "Stop making things up. Are you insulting my idol? Are you saying Ed's robbing the cradle? You can't even lie properly. If you'd said he got back together with Ellie Goulding, I might have believed you." Hearing Imogen say this, I became a bit anxious. If she got angry and hung up, I didn't know if I'd be able to call her back. So I quickly said, wait, don't hang up. I'll find some evidence. Just don't end the call." I grabbed my everyday phone and opened the music app, clicking on Ed Sheeran's profile. "If you don't believe me, listen to this. I'll play you snippets of Ed Sheeran's new songs from the past decade. You're his fan. Surely you'll recognize his voice. So I started playing his new songs one by one. After listening to a few, Imogen began to believe. Because AI wasn't advanced enough in that era, and as a longtime fan, Imogen could clearly tell this was Ed Sheeran's voice and style, but songs she had never heard before. Do you think I'd go to the trouble of finding someone who sounds exactly like Ed Sheeran and creates so many songs just to trick you? Imogen fell silent. I played Ed's latest release from this year. Halfway through, Imogen said, "All right, that's enough. I believe you." "You believe I'm from 2024? "Yes, because these songs are definitely sung by Ed. But they're not very good. Nowhere near as good as the A-Team. I was surprised by Imogen's discerning ear, but now that she believed me, I suddenly felt relieved. But in an instant, I also felt a wave of sadness. What difference did it make if she believed me? Should I tell her that she was about to leave me and beg her not to go? The words I couldn't say 16 years ago, I certainly wouldn't say 16 years later. So maybe this phone call was like a dream, just a chance for me to reconnect with Imogen across time and space. But at this moment, Imogen became very excited. "Since you're Zion from 2024, quick, tell me what property to buy. Will house prices fall? Which stocks will go up? And what about the new area planning? Will school district houses become hot property? Any big news you can tip me off about? I want to get promoted and earn more." Hearing Imogen suddenly ask me these questions, all related to money, and remembering her cold words when she left for South Korea, my heart sank. Indeed, Imogen was inherently materialistic. She could only think about money-related matters. So my earlier warmth disappeared, and I coldly said, "Is that all you can think to ask? Is that all that's in your head?" Imogen, hearing me say this, was completely unfazed and said, "Of course, what else should I ask? Do I need to ask who my husband is? Isn't that you? Hurry up and buy a house in a good area. You have a housing fund from work. I'll chip in some too. This way, our future child will have a head start in life." I was stunned. From her instinctive, unthinking words, I clearly sensed that she had never considered leaving me. Even when faced with this incredible opportunity to get information from the future, she had already factored me into her plans without a second thought. In other words, I had always been a constant in her ideal future. I couldn't help but want to cry, but just as I was about to speak, my mobile phone received a call. It was from Braden. Worried it might be about a new development in the case, I said to Imogen, "Don't hang up. Give me a minute, okay?" Imogen said, "Okay." I answered Braden's call. Braden said, "Boss, I've been thinking, and I didn't want to say this on WhatsApp, so I'm calling instead." "What is it?" "Well, I heard someone say you used to have a wife who went to South Korea and left you." I felt a bit angry. "What's that got to do with you?" Braden, who's usually quite afraid of me, immediately said when he heard my tone, "No, it's not that. The forensics team just sent an update. That body, it's her. The time of death seems to be 2008. When I heard this news, I was completely stunned. It turned out that Imogen Murphy, whom I had resented for so many years, had actually left me 16 years ago. Braden Mitchell, hearing my silence, quickly continued, "Boss, don't be too sad. We can't bring back the dead. As criminal investigators, I wearily replied, "I'll call you back. I'm fine." Then I hung up. Meanwhile, Imogen asked me, "What was that news just now?" I was momentarily at a loss for words, but after some thought, I decided to tell her, "My apprentice just called. The female body your magazine uncovered. It's you." "What? I'm dead." Imogen was shocked, but I immediately hushed her. "Keep your voice down. Don't let anyone else hear." Imogen said, "It's all right. The office is empty now. I'm the only one here. Everyone else is out reporting." She then questioned me, "Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? It's such a big deal." I thought to myself that I had to explain this thoroughly. Otherwise, Imogen's tragedy would inevitably repeat itself. Because in my timeline, I received news that you had gone to South Korea with your magazine's editor-in-chief, living together. Imogen. who had already lowered her voice, couldn't help but shout, "Herbert!" Herbert Pearson was the editor-in-chief of Imogen's magazine, always sporting a middle parting and looking quite greasy, like a catfish. I tried to stop her. "Can't you keep your voice down? What if someone hears?" Imogen said, "That's even more insulting than telling me I'm dead. How could I possibly be with Herbert? I feel sick just thinking about it." She made a retching sound. "I didn't believe it either at the time, but your mobile did send me a text message. You sent it that day and then you weren't home. There was also information about you at the border control, and I even received an anonymous letter with a photo of you and Herbert holding hands while walking in Seoul." Imogen fell silent. As I was speaking, I strongly felt that this was an intricately set trap. Imogen had grown up in an orphanage, and I was her only family in this city. As long as I believed Imogen had left, her disappearance would seem reasonable. But who could be in that photo? I mused. Imogen asked, "How was the photo sent to you?" I said, "It was an anonymous letter, claiming to be from one of your colleagues at the magazine. They said they felt sorry for me and advised me to give up hope, and that they had secretly taken the photo." The letter was typed, with no signature. Imogen then asked, "When did you receive my text message?" I answered without hesitation, "November 1st. Imogen gave a cold laugh. "Seems like you remember quite clearly. I don't know whether to praise you for caring about me or call you a big fool. Now's not the time to insult me, Imogen. You need to think about something. What's the date on your end right now?" "October 29th, why?" Imogen asked, then suddenly realized what I meant. "Are you saying I'll be dead in 2 days?" Although I didn't want to admit it, I could only agree with her deduction. "At least by then, your phone will be in someone else's hands, so your personal safety will naturally be in question. However, this time, I won't let that happen. I trust you." These 4 words warmed my heart, making me feel that my 16 years of struggle hadn't been in vain. My long-cooled heart was reignited with passion. "Imogen, you should go find the me from 16 years ago now, and stay by my side at all times. But at this time, shouldn't you be investigating that mother and child murder case? If I go to the crime scene, and I'm not a police officer, wouldn't that be inconvenient?" The mother and child murder case. I remembered this. A mother and her child were brutally murdered in their home. The perpetrator's methods were extremely cruel. The child was only 3 years old, and they weren't discovered until 3 days later. Imogen suddenly became curious and asked, "Did they ever find the killer? Was it her husband?" Indeed, the first suspect at the time was the child's father, as he was a pharmacist at a drug factory and had left for South Korea 3 days before. No, it was a drug addict. He said he was craving drugs at the time, broke in to steal, but was discovered, so he killed the mother and child. But after he left, he became more and more afraid, so he came back to the scene to take a look. That's when we caught him. He was arrested immediately. I think it was on October 29th. Imogen sighed. "God, that's so cruel. He was craving drugs, so he did such a terrible thing. That poor husband in South Korea. How heartbroken he must have been when he found out." But as I said this, I suddenly became alert. Wait, there's something suspicious about this case itself. What's suspicious? I remember, when we checked the CCTV footage, there was indeed someone who entered the victim's room, but they used their left hand to open the door. This is a habit of left-handed people. But I recall that when the drug addict signed his confession, he wrote with his right hand. Moreover, on the clothes he was wearing, there was DNA from another person, but we couldn't identify who it belonged to at the time. Imogen asked, "Then why didn't anyone say anything at the time?" I said, "At the time, this person looked very similar to the one in the CCTV footage. The person in the footage was also wearing a mask, so we could only judge by appearance. Plus, he confessed voluntarily after being arrested, so we had his statement. I only noticed this when I was writing the report later, but by then you had already left me, and I honestly didn't have the energy to revisit a case that had already been closed." I added, "This might also be related to what happened to you." "Ah?" Why do you say that? The husband in this case never showed up. Because we quickly caught the killer, he was cleared of suspicion, so he wasn't extradited. Would a normal person still have no contact when their wife and child have both died? And he also went to South Korea, and Herbert later went to South Korea too. These events happening so close together can't help but be suspicious. Imogen laughed. But lots of people go to South Korea every day. They can't all be connected. Regardless, at least this case now has some suspicious points. We need to break through quickly. Maybe we can find better clues related to the case of your murder. For safety, you should go directly to the crime scene and find me now. All right, let's keep in touch. I'll keep this phone fully charged. Let me know as soon as you get there. Just as I was about to hang up, I suddenly thought of something. I know how to find out who sent the anonymous letter. I've kept that letter and photo all this time. I'll take it to the forensics center right now and have my colleagues take a look. Imogen asked in surprise. Can they really trace it that easily? As long as it's a British citizen who's been registered, they can be identified. We use big data for investigations now. It's much more convenient than in 2008. Imogen said, Then hurry and go. I'll go find you from 16 years ago. We split up to take action. The old wound on my body that had been aching suddenly felt better, and I felt full of energy. This was a chance given by heaven to make up for my regrets, and I had to seize it firmly. But the results were not as hoped. My colleagues at the forensic center quickly screened the evidence and found fingerprints other than mine. But there was no match for these fingerprints in the database. I called Imogen again. No match. What do we do now? Could this person be dead? I shook my head. I think it's more likely that this person has also left the country. Imogen, while no one's looking, take one pen from each desk in your office, the ones everyone uses regularly. Imogen asked me, What for? Even though we can't find this person in the database, if you get pens with their fingerprints and bury them in a fixed location, I should be able to receive them on my end, right? Imogen exclaimed excitedly, Zion, I've noticed you've gotten smarter after 40. You can even come up with such a good idea. I smiled wryly. I saw it in a movie. So we agreed to bury these pens under the tree next to the park bench where we used to go on dates. Revisiting this park, I felt everything had changed. Yet everything seemed the same. Although there were more facilities, there seemed to be fewer people playing. And the tree next to the park bench was still as lush as ever. For a person, 16 years is a long time, but for a big tree, perhaps this is just a short moment. I hope one day we can still walk side by side here, I thought to myself. Imogen called. I've stolen pens from over 40 people's desks in our office, except for Annie the cleaners, because she doesn't have a desk. I chuckled and told Imogen not to forget to label each pen with a note and to bury them quickly. Then I heard Imogen digging. After a while, Imogen said, I've buried them. Come and get them quickly. I hurriedly dug up the hole by the tree and indeed found a plastic pen holder full of pens, each labeled with a small tag bearing the owner's name. I was very excited, firstly because this matter was about to have a breakthrough, and secondly because all of this was real. I could communicate across time and space with the person I loved most, working together to change our fate. I'm taking these to the forensics center right now, although it was a bit odd to bring dozens of pens for analysis at once. I had a certain reputation in local criminal investigation, so my friends at the forensics center quickly provided results. According to the analysis, the fingerprints on one of these pens match those of the person who handled the photo you provided. I quickly looked, and the forensics team handed me the pen that matched. I saw it was labeled Kevin Collins. Kevin Collins? That bastard. How dare he harm me? Imogen was very angry when she learned the identity of the culprit. At this point, I called my apprentice Braden Mitchell, telling him to check the system for a person named Kevin Collins who used to be an editor at the Times, while instructing Imogen, You must not show any abnormality. Don't alert anyone. Don't worry, I understand. After experiencing this series of events, Imogen's emotions were much more stable than at the beginning. It seems this Kevin Collins is a key suspect. How can we apprehend him? Is he really the murderer? Oh, Zion, I just remembered. During our company dinner, he used his left hand to hold chopsticks, and a female colleague complained that he was hindering her from getting food, left-handed. Just then, Braden's call came in again, and I quickly answered, "What did you find?" "Boss, we found him. This Kevin Collins immigrated to South Korea in early 2009. South Korea again." I gave a cold laugh. "Good, that was quite efficient. I'll talk to you later." Hanging up on Braden, I continued talking to Imogen. "Now go find me from 16 years ago and tell him there are new developments in the case." "What's going on?" I asked. I shared my analysis. Judging from Kevin's subsequent behavior, he must have been involved in both the mother-son murder case and your case. Otherwise, it wouldn't be such a coincidence that he went to France almost at the same time as Herbert. And he deliberately sent those fake photos to stop me from looking for you. So I have reason to suspect that the DNA on the drug addict's clothes belongs to him. How should I explain this to you from 16 years ago? Imogen inquired. Just tell him that you once saw the drug addict with Kevin, and advise me to get Kevin's DNA tested to see if it matches the one on the clothes, I suggested. Will that work? I smiled. I know myself. Whenever there's a new lead in a case, I'll jump on it immediately. Especially if it's coming from you, I'll definitely give it my all. Imogen thought for a moment. True. If you don't listen, I'll just have to give you a smack. We burst into laughter. This was probably the first time in 16 years that I had laughed so heartily and genuinely, though it was still mixed with fear and uncertainty, as I didn't know where fate would lead Imogen and me next, or if we could change this tragic outcome. Half an hour later, Imogen called me. "I've told the younger you everything. I even found a hair on Kevin's office chair, and he's gone to have the DNA tested right away. But I've just thought of something." "What is it?" "To make it easier when we're talking, should I call you Old Zion and him Young Zion?" I chuckled. "That works." Imogen sighed on the other end of the line. "I wonder what you look like now. Are you bald? Have you put on weight?" "That Kevin is balding." "No, my hair is still the same as before, just all white now. And I've actually lost some weight." Imogen said, "I think young Zion will ask me how I know all this. Maybe we should just tell him the truth. You should tell me some secrets that you've never told me or anyone else. That way, he'll believe me." I thought about it and agreed. When I was little, I stole some stationery from the shop near our school. There was this pencil case I really liked, but my mum wouldn't buy it for me. So I nicked it. It felt thrilling at first, but when I got home, I was terrified of being caught. I couldn't sleep all night. The next day, I was so groggy that I tripped and fell as soon as I left the house. That's why I've always believed that bad deeds are punished. But I've never had the courage to tell anyone about this. Imogen laughed. So the great detective was once a little thief. What else? Anything about me? I hesitated, trying to search my memory, and remembered something. In 2008, my favorite game was Grand Theft Auto. I was obsessed with it. One day when I was off work, you insisted on dragging me out shopping. I lied and said I was going to visit my mum, but I actually stayed home to play the game. Imogen was furious. "That was just last week. Wait till I get my hands on you." "No, I can't punish you. I'll punish young Zion instead." I grimaced. "Better not. If you hit him too hard, I might end up with scars here." Imogen pressed on. "Come on, confess. Do you have any other secrets?" I said, "That's really all. I'm going to spend my life with you. I can't keep many secrets from you." Hearing this, Imogen fell silent. After a moment, Imogen said to me, "This time, we'll definitely spend our lives together." I was about to speak when suddenly everything started spinning. It felt like I was entering a time tunnel, with memories flooding my mind. Then I blacked out. When I woke up again, I was still lying in the attic of my house. But this time, my memory included quite a few new changes. Because I had listened to Imogen's advice, I had compared the DNA sample from the other person on the junkie's bloody clothes with Kevin Collins, and they matched perfectly. At the same time, we also found out that Kevin and the victim were university classmates, fitting the condition of a crime committed by an acquaintance. After analysis and comparison, the person in the CCTV footage also closely resembled Kevin Collins. A search of Kevin's house uncovered a knife which, upon examination, was confirmed to be the murder weapon. It was a case of irrefutable evidence. Faced with such a strong chain of evidence, Kevin had no choice but to confess to the murder. His reason was that, due to unrequited love during university, he had harbored resentment and finally acted on it while drunk. He later bribed a drug addict, promising him a sum of money to take the blame for him. But in this world, Imogen still died, and I was still alone. Except this time, Imogen's death was a direct disappearance, without so much drama. But it was still at the same time yesterday that her body was discovered. With a mix of disappointment and pain, I dialed Imogen's number. "Hello? How's it going, old Zion? Did you catch Kevin Collins?" "We did." "That's great. So how am I this time?" I sighed. "Still the same." I then told her about her 16-year disappearance and the discovery of her body yesterday. Imogen was silent for a moment, but when she spoke again, she didn't ask about herself. Instead, she said to me, "This time, are you still alone?" "Yes," I mumbled. Imogen laughed. "Oh, you. When I ran off with Herbert, you became a bachelor. I disappeared for 16 years, and you're still alone. Should I take this to mean that no one wants you, or that you love me too much?" I felt a bit awkward. "Either works." Imogen then said, word by word, "I promise you, this time, I definitely won't let you be alone." I was touched. Although I knew Imogen couldn't determine the course of fate, I was once again certain that as long as we uncovered the truth of this case, we could still be together forever. I said, "But regardless, since it's still about the magazine, we should start by investigating Herbert." "How much do you know about Herbert?" Imogen said, "Oh, come on, Zion. It's not like I actually had anything with him. I've only been working there for half a year. How would I know if he has any issues? He just interviewed me when I applied for the job, and we've only exchanged a few words at company gatherings. That's all." I said, "I need to look into this person's background." At this moment, a voice suddenly came from Imogen's side. "Are you talking to the future, me that you mentioned?" Hearing this voice and the stuttering, almost foolish tone, I knew it was me from 16 years ago. Imogen said, "Yes, you're young Zion, he's old Zion. Can I talk to him for a bit?" Imogen handed him the phone, and I heard young Zion take it and say to me, "You say you're me from 16 years in the future, but if I believe this, given my position as a detective, it seems a bit too foolish. I have the authority to arrest you for fraud." Hearing his self-righteous tone, I couldn't help but recall that indeed, in my first few years on the job, I had this attitude, suspicious of everything while thinking highly of myself. I chuckled coldly and said, "The final boss in that game, you cheated using Game Shark, didn't you? And when you were at the police academy, you got into a fight with someone while playing Warhammer at an internet cafe, right? I remember you didn't dare tell anyone, and ended up paying £500 to settle it privately. Also, what was the name of that girl at the police academy?" "Oh, I think it was Lily Gill. She wrote you a love letter, and even though you didn't like her, you read the letter 3 times with great interest before writing a long email to reject her the next day. You haven't told Imogen about this, have you? All right, let's talk about something else. Of course I believe Imogen's words. I believe you are me from 16 years in the future." Young Zion was so frightened by me that he immediately changed his attitude and fully believed that I was him, and he was me, because I had never discussed these few things with anyone around me. Imogen was very curious beside him. "What are you two talking about?" Young Zion and I said in unison, "Nothing much." Then we both laughed. It seems that habits are indeed hard to change. When feeling guilty, the middle-aged me was no different from the younger me. I brought the topic back to reality, asking young Zion, apart from the murder weapon, what else was found in Kevin Collins' house? Nothing else, but when we were taking him out of the office, he had a piece of paper with him. Just as we were about to pick it up, he quickly grabbed it and ate it. After we subdued him, we managed to get a bit out of his mouth. But it was just 2 words, a small bracket, and then 2 more words, devil plan. Devil as in evil, plan as in scheme. I thought and thought, but couldn't understand what devil plan meant. What could the last 2 words be? Diabolical scheme? But that's not one devil either. Then we started talking about the protection work for Imogen. I recalled a memory from this new timeline and said, in my memory, Imogen met me once on October 31st this time, but because she was quite busy at work, she only said a couple of words before leaving. Young Zion asked, what did she say? I thought for a moment, something like, Zion, I'm a bit busy with work. I'll find you tonight. Young Zion pondered on the other end of the phone. That proves that on the morning of October 31st, the incident hadn't happened yet. I instructed young Zion to start protecting Imogen's safety strictly from the end of work on October 31st. Young Zion said firmly, I'll definitely do it. Then, he asked me in a low voice, do you have any advice for me? I think there must be. I chuckled coldly, interrupting him. You're thinking too much. You want to make a name for yourself in the police force. You want to earn a first-class merit. You've even thought about when a top celebrity might play your heroic deeds. You want to be called the British Sherlock Holmes. You want all criminals to tremble at the mention of your name. You also want to buy a 3-bedroom flat within Zone 3, the big one for you and Imogen, the small one for the child, and another guest room for your parents to stay occasionally. Young Zion was speechless. He wanted to say, how do you know? But after the first 3 words, he swallowed the last one. I then lectured him in a very fatherly tone. I have no advice for you because none of it matters. The only advice now is to take good care of Imogen. If you can't do this, after 16 years you'll find that none of these things matter to you. Having them is the same as not having them. After hearing this, young Zion said very determinedly, even if it costs me my life, I'll definitely do it. Subsequently, I went to the station to check Herbert's personal information. During the investigation, I discovered an important fact. Herbert had an ex-wife with a mental illness who had killed someone before. The case file at the time showed that Herbert's ex-wife had tendencies of schizophrenia. After the divorce, she constantly believed Herbert had a mistress, so she cornered one of Herbert's colleagues at home and killed her, letting her bleed to death. The body wasn't found at the time, but based on the amount of blood at the scene, death could be confirmed. Herbert's wife ran away after that and was wanted nationwide, but her whereabouts remained unknown. I felt that everything before me was a tangled mess. How come there's another homicide case? Could this mentally ill ex-wife also be a key element in all this? But at this moment, Braden suddenly called me, Master! Perfect timing. I was about to look for you. I need you to use every means possible to find information about a man named Herbert Pearson. He used to be the editor-in-chief of the Times. I suspect this murder case is related to him. Find all the information you can about him. All right, Master. But there's new development now. What development? Another female corpse has been found in the wall of that magazine office. Another one. My mind was in chaos. All these events caught me off guard, and I reckon my colleagues felt the same. Therefore, I thought it necessary to cancel my sick leave and head to the station. Just as I was leaving, I realized I was being followed. Through the reflection in the apartment building's windows, I could see a homeless man tailing me. When I turned the corner, I deliberately paused, pretending to tie my shoelace, then swiftly lunged at him, pinning him to the ground. You dare to tail a detective? Who are you? I initially thought he was a petty thief or a thug planning to rob me. To my surprise, the man dressed as a homeless person said, You are the one who arrested Kevin Collins. Hearing the name Kevin Collins, I became fully alert and immediately demanded, Who are you? I pulled out my handcuffs and cuffed the homeless man to a nearby pillar. The homeless man didn't try to hide anything. After hearing my question, he answered honestly, I'm the victim of Kevin Collins' murder case. In an instant, I understood. This was the husband who had been in South Korea, unheard from for so long. How did you find me? I just Smuggled myself back. 16 years, I don't want to run anymore. I'm tired. You're our family's savior. I want to turn myself into you. The homeless man seemed dazed, staring at the sky, muttering to himself. Then he told me his story. It turned out that Herbert Pearson, the editor-in-chief of Imogen's magazine, was the head of the UK branch of an underground drug manufacturing and trafficking organization. The organization's members were spread across various sectors of society. The raw material for the drugs came from ephedrine, which was supposed to be used for legal pharmaceutical production. The processing site was hidden in a large local pharmaceutical factory, and this publishing house was the organization's underground information station. Kevin Collins was also one of Herbert's subordinates. The homeless man's name was Freddie Hunt. He knew Kevin Collins because his wife was Kevin's classmate. Freddie was originally a chemical researcher, but at the time, tempted by the prospect of quick money, he was persuaded by Kevin to join the drug manufacturing operation. The underground pharmaceutical factory in South Korea was their headquarters, so they all had passports arranged, sometimes needing to stay in South Korea for months to refine new components. But soon after, he realized things had gone too far. Once, while in South Korea, he witnessed several people in the organization being executed on the spot. Freddie was originally just a scholar who had been tempted by money to help with drug refinement, but he had never thought about murder. After seeing someone die before his eyes, he was determined to leave the organization. At the time, he thought it would be simple. He planned to stay in South Korea for a while, lay low, leave the organization, then bring his wife and child over and live under a new identity. But he didn't expect these drug dealers to be darker than he imagined. Kevin Collins, as his wife's university classmate, actually killed his entire family. Hearing this, although I felt Freddie was guilty, I sympathized with the fate of his wife and son. Moreover, I deduced one thing. Herbert was planning to flee precisely because of Freddie's sudden departure, fearing it might unravel everything and expose their identities. What was that sinister plan? I still hadn't figured it out. At this point, Freddie burst into tears. I worked there for 3 years, earned 30 years worth of money, but my wife and child are dead. I had to hide from assassins in South Korea and even had to smuggle myself back. What use is this 30 years worth of money? What can it buy? I coldly replied, when your loved ones are dead, nothing can be exchanged for them. Saying this, I uncuffed the homeless man and took him to my car, considering it as turning himself in, hoping he could get a relatively lenient treatment. At least he wouldn't have to flee like a ghost every day. But Freddie was just one of the pawns. Herbert was the biggest mastermind behind the scenes. How to deal with Herbert? Now there's no concrete evidence, only Freddie's testimony. I don't know if it's enough to extradite Herbert back to the UK for trial. I arrived at the station. My superiors and subordinates all looked a bit awkward when they saw me. I knew this was because they had found Imogen's body and were afraid I couldn't handle it emotionally, so they were very sympathetic towards me. The chief even said to me, "Wilson, you should rest. Don't follow the case. Consider it sick leave." I nodded and accepted the leader's goodwill, because now all my energy was focused on 16 years ago. Only by resolving what happened then could the current tragedy be prevented from happening again. Braden, has the identity of the other body been confirmed? Not yet, sir. It's still being identified. As for Herbert Pearson's information, I've already asked colleagues to work on it. I'll send you the electronic files later. You should rest at home for now. Everyone is... All right, shut up. I handed Freddie over to the station, but didn't even request to see Imogen's remains. I simply didn't have the courage. I couldn't accept that a person I had loved and hated for half my life would be presented to me in such a state. After returning home, I thought carefully about this matter. It seemed that all the changes occurred during the night of October 31st to the early morning of November 1st. If only I had kept a closer eye back then, things might have turned out differently. I originally wanted to rest, but I couldn't sleep at all. It wasn't until dawn that Braden called me, saying he had found all of Herbert's information and sent it to me in electronic files. I couldn't sleep anyway. So I got up and opened my computer, carefully analyzing and observing, hoping to find some clues in there. But just then, I saw a news article about Herbert and immediately realized that I had been completely wrong. I saw that the news of Herbert's ex-wife killing someone and fleeing had made the headlines back then, and the victim Annie Grant's photo was printed in the newspaper. This victim looked exactly like Imogen. In an instant, all the puzzles were solved. The person with Herbert was the victim Annie Grant from this case. In other words, Herbert's ex-wife might not have disappeared, but could have been killed by Annie Grant. And that blood belonging to Annie Grant, just like in a detective novel, was probably blood drawn in batches to create a false impression. The real victim, perhaps, was the other body in the wall, which would be Herbert's ex-wife. And in my memory, the Imogen I saw on October 31st might have been Annie Grant in disguise, while tonight, the night of October 30th, was actually when Imogen met her demise. Thinking of this, I immediately called Imogen, but after a few rings, instead of hearing Imogen's voice, I heard a woman laughing and saying, "You really are the perfect water ghost. See how alike we look." At this moment, I understood that the parentheses Kevin Collins wrote on that paper, "Ghost Plan," actually meant water ghost plan. It meant that the water ghost in the river was catching a substitute, and after eating the substitute, the water ghost would take on the appearance of this substitute, replacing her identity, and Imogen was that substitute. From the moment Imogen started working, it was because she looked like Annie Grant that she was targeted. When the two were about to emigrate, they would use Imogen's identity as a cover to flee far away. So, it wasn't that Imogen had obtained some criminal evidence, but that they had captured Imogen from the beginning to prepare for their escape. Imogen shouted on the phone, "Don't come here. My boyfriend is a police officer." Annie Grant laughed and said, "Kevin was supposed to come today, but unfortunately he was caught, so we had to come ourselves." A man coughed. I thought it must be Herbert. Thinking about it now, Herbert's so-called mentally ill ex-wife must have known about Herbert's misdeeds and wanted to reconcile with him, but Herbert and Annie Grant were having an affair. To silence the ex-wife, they killed her and fabricated the mentally ill killer scenario. Since then, Annie Grant had become a dead person, unable to show herself in public until Imogen appeared. "Tomorrow, I'll be you." Annie Grant laughed a bit maniacally. Indeed, for someone who had been unable to show herself in public for a long time, having a new identity to flee to a foreign country with her lover was worth getting excited about. But at this moment, I felt like my heart was on fire. I was extremely ashamed of my own stupidity, thinking about changing all this, but that was me 16 years ago, who couldn't possibly understand these things. So Imogen would die at the hands of these two people again. Imogen cried on the phone, no longer shouting, but said to the phone, "Zion, I've missed you again this time. Forget me. Live your life well. Live for me." Then I heard a gunshot, and the phone seemed to have been dropped on the ground. My head was splitting with pain, feeling the timeline converging once again, and I fainted on the floor. As I woke up, I opened my eyes. I had fantasized that upon waking, I would see a beautiful large house, Imogen, and our children, telling me this was the life I had lived for 16 years. But it wasn't so. I still lay alone in the attic bed, cold and damp. My mind was in chaos, desperately trying to recall new memories from this timeline. But perhaps due to the grief, I couldn't remember a series of events about Imogen. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. I hurried down to open it, hoping to see Imogen. But to my surprise, it was Braden. My heart sank once again. After Braden came in, he said to me, "Boss, still thinking about the missus?" I glanced at him and said, "You know about it too?" He smiled. "Who doesn't know about this? But if you ask me, you should try to let it go. It seems in this parallel universe, I had still lost Imogen." I sighed deeply. In the end, I still lost her. Braden was shocked to hear this and said, "You can't say that. If the missus heard you, she'd kill you. She's already furious as it is." What? I was confused. Had I married someone else in this timeline? Braden continued, If you ask me, this is your fault too. Think about it, you became the youngest deputy director of the local authority in our police system. That's a good thing, of course. But at the celebration party, you got drunk, and when the missus called asking you to come home early to watch telly with her, it should have remained a private matter. You put it on speakerphone yourself and everyone had a laugh. But what happened next? You felt embarrassed and, fueled by alcohol, started arguing with her. It blew up and even trended online, saying the famous henpecked director blew up at his wife, making your sister-in-law the laughingstock of her relatives. That's why she kicked you out for 3 days. You should reflect on this. A harmonious family is the foundation of success, isn't it? Only now did I understand everything. It turned out that day, it was still me, young Zion, who arrived at the scene in time, arrested Herbert and Annie on the spot, and saved Imogen's life. That shot was actually fired by me. After interrogation, Herbert and Annie confessed to their crimes, which led to the cracking of an international drug manufacturing case. I solved 2 major cases that year, became the annual advanced worker, and gave reports everywhere. The following year, I married Imogen, and we had a daughter in the 3rd year. Now, 16 years later, I am the deputy director of the local authority. At this moment, the doorbell rang again, and I hurried to open it. It was Imogen. She looked more mature than 16 years ago, but still beautiful and hadn't gained weight. Her hair was now curly, and she wore more makeup, but her expression was unfriendly. She held a lunchbox in her hand and handed it to me. I was worried you might starve to death here. Seeing Imogen, Braden tactfully left. I stared at Imogen for a minute, making her uncomfortable. Then my body moved uncontrollably, and I embraced Imogen. I hugged her tightly, like a child protecting a sandcastle, both comical and sincere. Imogen struggled fiercely, shouting, "Are you mad? Let go of me. I'm still angry." Then I released Imogen and asked her, "Why did I suddenly turn back that day and catch Herbert and Annie at your house?" Hearing this, Imogen's anger subsided. She had been waiting for this moment when I would receive the memories of both young and old Zion. So she said to me, "Because that year, from the information you received from yourself 16 years in the future, you knew that on October 31st, I called you Old Zion. You felt something was off because I had clearly agreed to call the younger you Young Zion from then on. That proved this person might not be me. Then I followed the clues, found evidence, and even staked out your house? Yes, what else? Now you've got a bigger belly and a higher position, but your brain isn't as sharp as it used to be." Seeing me lost in thought, Imogen added, "You said something back then that left a deep impression on me. What was it? I'm so afraid of losing you that I had to learn to analyze everything 16 years in advance." Hearing this, I couldn't help but hug Imogen again. This time Imogen didn't struggle, but still scolded, "You haven't even shaved. Get off. Hurry up and eat. Then pick up our daughter from school. But you're still only allowed to sleep in the study tonight."